Good day, everyone. Welcome to our first open webinar series, Engage Your Audience with Storytelling. I see lots of names out there on the list of attendees, and I cannot wait to see this group in person. It'll be nice when we can all start getting together. So I am Patty Wills, the National Reverse Retail Sales Manager with Open Mortgage. I've been involved in the reverse mortgage side of the mortgage business for longer than I choose to admit. But one thing that I do see is that change is the middle name of reverse mortgages. There's always something going on. And one thing is certain, and it's true in this business as with all businesses, and life too. You always need to be learning and growing if you want to be successful. So to support you in your journey, my colleagues, Zebulon, Josh Moran, and Brendan Buffa, and I want to share knowledge and new skills that will help you be even more successful in your business. So I will be turning the webinar over to Zebulon to begin the presentation. Please put any questions that come up for you over the course of this webinar in the chat box, and we will answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And please check your control panel for the handouts. And now I'm turning it over to you, Zeb. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We have a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of really good information for you. So I'll just go ahead and dive right in. Today we'll have a presentation kind of in three parts. I'm going to kick things off with a kind of a technical analysis, I guess, of the fundamentals of effective stories. Then I'm going to pass the reins on to my colleague Brendan Buffa to learn more on how to tell stories using social media. Then we'll close things with our SVP of Wholesale, Josh Moran, and he's going to share his experience with story selling and how it's impacted his career and his relationships. So I think it's important that we establish our purpose here, our answer to why. Why should I tell stories? Why should I try to tell them better? And if you watched our webinar, our previous webinar at NRMLA, you know that we addressed this at length. So this might serve as a recap for some of you, and for the rest of you who didn't attend, that's completely fine. I want to tell you that these statements that I've made and we're going to go over, these were previously supported with data and findings from psychological research and experiments. So these fact statements here, these claims are and have been kind of supported with data. So why tell stories? It helps customers relax and listen. It helps build strong relationships. It makes you and your ideas and your products ultimately more memorable, which increases your value. Stories, they speak to the part of the brain where decisions are made. And this is a point that I don't want to gloss over. You know, we like to think that we make decisions consciously. We examine facts and weigh our options and then make the best, most rational decision. But that's not true. Most people, most of the time, make their decisions in their subconscious mind. And later, they justify their decision or actions in the conscious part of their mind. Stories, if you will, they live in the subconscious part of our mind. Stories teach us how to act specifically when forced or faced with any number of circumstances or challenges. This is exactly why we teach children almost exclusively using stories, especially in their early developmental years. The lessons that are embedded into stories, they become embedded into our subconscious, and they serve as a map to navigate the most stable and the best path forward when confronted with uncertainty, which is our future from moment to moment or struggle to struggle. Stories also, this ties directly into speaking to the part of the mind where decisions are made. Stories communicate complex ideas in situations better and more effectively than any other mode of communication. So if you think about, besides marriage and children, a mortgage is people's most important decision most of the time, definitely the most important financial decision. With a reverse mortgage specifically, our customers have usually addressed the marriage and the children issue. So deciding upon a reverse mortgage is easily a person's most important decision, specifically, in that season of their life. And, think about it, how many times have you seen someone presented with all the evidence needed to make a smart and beneficial decision? Look, forget life decisions, just say a financial decision, reverse mortgage. And they ignore all evidence and they make the worst possible decision. That's because our conscious mind is not the one driving. Our conscious mind is behind the wheel, for sure, but it's the guy in the back seat, our subconscious, that is really navigating. And so when you're talking to people about these complex situations and these life-changing decisions, you want to be in the back seat, talking to the guy that's really navigating the vehicle. Okay, so we know why we should be telling stories, right? But what makes a good story? What makes a story effective? First, we need to recognize that storytelling it's a skill and it's a craft. It's something that you can always improve upon, you can always better, no matter how naturally gifted you may be. Because it's a skill, though, that means it can be learned by condensing down to its most essential elements, identifying those elements, understanding them, and then applying them in your own life and in your own stories. So first, let's look at the elements of good stories, and then we're going to discuss the structure that we plug them into. These are the basic elements of any good, effective story. You need a relatable hero, a relevant challenge, and an honest struggle. All three of these things work together to yield a worthy lesson. Now let's look at each of these elements individually. The purpose of your story is tied in with the worthy lesson. Your purpose and the worthy lesson must be true. And the worthy lesson is, obviously going to come at the end of the story after the main character has undergone conflict and struggle and come out the other side. They learn something. But the worthy lesson comes at the end for the audience, not for you, the storyteller. You begin with your worthy lesson. You begin with the purpose of the story before you even begin to tell or you start to tell the story out in public. Your purpose, the purpose of your story, should be kind of your guiding light in deciding what events or characters to relay to your audience. For example, let's say that you're going to tell a story, and the purpose of your story, the message of your story, is that you are particularly talented and competent in navigating family relationships. So you have clients that come to you who are considering a reverse mortgage, but their heirs or their relatives are busting down the doors to talk to you or to perhaps seek combat with you in one form or fashion because they are overprotective or they're protective or they're of their relative that's talking to you about a reverse mortgage, or perhaps they have some ulterior motives, right? But whatever the case, you are particularly gifted at navigating those complex and oftentimes combative family relationships. And that is the purpose of your story. So if you're going to tell a story to another customer who may be dealing with a similar set of circumstances and a similar set of family members, you would want to look back at the story that you want to tell them. Look at the events in the story. Look at the characters in the story. And then your guiding principle is your purpose. And you could ask yourself, okay, well, does this character that I'm thinking about including in my story, or does this event that I'm thinking about including in my story, does that push my message, my purpose further towards the audience, or does it distract from the purpose? Does it distract from my message? You want everything that you want everything included in your story to push your purpose forward, to push your message forward. Your purpose also underlies everything in your story. That's why I say it's the guiding principle. It's the guiding light. You hold everything up against your purpose. If it doesn't square with the purpose or with your purpose, then you do away with that event. And it could be the case that you need to do away with the entire story. You have chosen the wrong story. If your story doesn't further your purpose, you have the wrong story. And you never want to have your audience asking this, because this is what we are purpose searching machines. We're constantly asking ourselves, like, why am I here? What am I? I hope too many of you are not asking yourself that very question right now. Why am I here? Why am I listening to this guy? Right? And when creating something like this is exactly what I do. I think of you. I think of my audience. I think, okay, well, I don't want them asking, why am I here? I need to make clear the purpose of my presentation. I need to make clear the purpose of my story and have that be a through line in everything that I say and every bit of information that I provide. So your worthy lesson's tied into the purpose of the story, and your worthy lesson also must be true. And it must be true morally, not necessarily factually. Now, this is a very, very deep and topic that we could spend a very long time over, and I'm going to bore you over it. It is very similar to questioning the purpose of your story, though, right? When you're looking at a series of events and looking at a character and something that has happened in the past, if you want to tell a story about it, asking, like, does this square with my purpose? Does this fall in line with my purpose? It's the same thing with asking if something is true or not, right? Like, does this push the moral truth of my story? Again, another example. Let's say in that very same story about you navigating these kind of a very hostile family and while at the same time trying to best serve someone that needs or really needs a reverse mortgage. And the purpose of your story is that you are good at handling those relationships. It just so happens to be that the reverse mortgage loan amount was $382,476. Now, does it matter if the loan amount was $382,476 versus $375,000? Does it really matter? Well, no. Is it factually inaccurate? Yes, it is. That is a factually inaccurate statement in your story, but that doesn't necessarily make it a lie or anything. As a matter of fact, you want to think again first about your audience, and you want to understand the concept that, like, if you're something like $382,476, that's a lot of numbers to remember. And you're always competing for space in someone's mind or in someone's head whenever you're trying to share a story. And if being entirely factually accurate, again, if it's a series of events that happen, right? Giving someone a step-by-step series of events rather than just summarizing a series of events that really don't matter for the overall purpose of your story, giving someone the exact loan amount to the penny, doesn't really matter versus a nice round number that doesn't take up a lot of space in people's minds. And I say this to you guys because I'm very guilty of this as well, but especially as loan originators, we often find ourselves lost in the weeds dealing with a lot of data and a lot of information surrounding a mortgage transaction, right? And we ourselves get lost trying to give as clear a picture in our minds of what actually happened for the audience to where we kind of we can't see the forest for the trees. And so you want to keep that in mind whenever you're deciding the purpose and the truth of your story. You obviously need to start with a relatable hero after you've got your purpose. Main characters that your audience can identify with are going to be really important. The more like your audience the character is, the more they'll listen, the more they'll remember, the more that they'll learn. Now, your role in stories is going to vary. So for everyone, we're all the hero in our own movie, right? And then everybody else surrounding us is just the supporting characters. And you want to acknowledge that whenever you're telling stories. So if you're telling a story to a customer about a situation that is much like their own, that you handled previously, well, you want to make the main character in the story, not you. You want to make the main character the customer. And your role is going to be the guide, the wise sage, right? The person that educates them and counsels them and then facilitates the action which they take so that they overcome their struggles. They are the hero in their own story, and you are just the guide. Now, for a different audience, that might change. If you are going to, I don't know, if you want to strike up a business, a relationship with a financial advisor, or if you want to expand into doing reverse mortgages for purchase, and you want to establish some relationships with realtors. Okay, well, just take the realtor thing, for example. If you were going to try to establish a relationship with a realtor, realtors, let's say, not particularly well-versed in how a reverse mortgage for purchase, how that works, and maybe it seems kind of too good to be true. They don't really know you. You're a reverse loan originator who, doesn't have a ton of impact, let's say hypothetically, in the real estate industry right now, because you don't do a ton of forward traditional mortgages. Okay, so one of the most important things that you do is you establish your competency, right? Like you can send your customers to me, and they will be okay. I'm good at my job, and we will all get on the other side of these transactions, fatter and happier. So in establishing your competency, then in that case, you're going to, talking to a realtor, you might want to paint yourself as the hero in that story to showcase your ability, to showcase your skill. Whenever you're doing that, you don't want to forget about the relatability factor. So there is a very thin line that you can walk whenever you are creating yourself as the hero in your stories for the appropriate audience. There is a thin line between like establishing competency and proficiency and then becoming unrelatable. And that's my note here that says, do not create an LO Superman. Because a lot of people think that whenever I talk about this, a lot of people mistake what I'm saying for, don't be arrogant. And that is not at all the same. That is not what I'm talking about. There's a big leap from going from, a relatable character that has struggles, that overcomes them, to then becoming a little too perfect and becoming unrelatable. Then way on the other side, becoming arrogant. There's a big jump from being unrelatable to becoming arrogant. So what most people end up doing is they fall in that unrelatable category, which is the issue that I have here with Superman, right? Like Superman is the quintessential comic book superhero, and he has his engagement with the general public and culture has waned over the last 30 years, whether that be in comic books or through movies, where writers and directors, they're always trying to reinvent or tweak or fiddle with Superman's backstory, the Superman's character. And that's simply because, he's a god that is very, very handsome, that, fights for truth, justice, and the American way. I mean, he's a Boy Scout that also has the powers of God, right? And that's, nobody can really relate to that. And that shows in his engagement in popular culture versus, like a character like Batman, for example, whose popularity has only gained in an engagement in popularity with popular culture because he's a human being that is flawed and dark and all that stuff. But he is in a crazy fantasy world like superheroes and stuff. Batman is far more relatable because he is far more flawed and far more human. He actually is human. Superman isn't. Now, again, Superman is anything but arrogant, right? Superman's problem with audiences is not him being arrogant. He's a very humble character. It's just that it is too perfect. So people don't care and people aren't engaged because they do not find him relatable. So remember that you want to try to strike that balance between showing your competency, but not being so competent and perfect and without challenges that you become unrelatable. Okay, after you've got your hero, your character, you need to have a relevant challenge. And your relevant challenge, it is either an obstacle or an opportunity. A lot of us know that many times those can be one and the same. And you want to be able to layer in the degree of the struggle or the opportunity to tailor or tweak it for maximum effect, because the struggle is ultimately what is going to draw in the audience. If you have too many struggles, or if it's too complicated, then it will distract from the purpose of your story. And if you don't have enough of a struggle, then nobody cares, right? So again, look at this example, right? Mary goes to the store. Okay, who cares? Buy some milk. I still don't care, and I don't think you do either. For her baby. Okay, I got my father, not a total machine. I care a little bit about that. Who is sick? I care. You care. And hasn't eaten in days because a local gang stole her money on the way home from working her second job, right? And then now we all really care, and we want to start a GoFundMe for Mary, or go get some, vigilante weapons and protect her on the way to the store, right? We are drawn into the story, or drawn into this character, Mary, now, because we have a relevant challenge that, again, will draw in the audience. Many of you see this with your customers, or you have this waiting for you with your customers, because their problems, their challenges lie far beyond just the problem within the mortgage transaction, or the problem that the mortgage is going to help fix. Several years ago, I did a traditional 203H loan for a friend of mine who lost her home in a flood. I live in Southeast Texas. We get flooded out here like every other year. And she was a single mother with a baby on the way. And she was a teacher that was right at they don't pay teachers a lot down here. She was right at the poverty level. And she had both of her elderly parents who were living in Austin, who could no longer afford their home because of the rising property taxes and stuff up there, that were coming to live with her right before her home was washed away, and she had to get another one. So her problem, her struggle lays far beyond just the loss of the home, and then needing to find, she did not have a lot of money saved up either, which is a good thing about the 203H, there's no down payment. Her problem went far beyond just the loan and the housing situation, right? All of that, when related and when stacked and told correctly, ties into and provides a hook to bring the audience in. So you have to have a challenge. Too many challenges, however, can distract from the overall purpose of your story. So you want to make sure that you find that balance. And this is these are general guidelines to follow, right? Because this depends on the audience, and it depends on the story. But those are the elements of a story. It's very, 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 very basic. You take those elements and then you plug them into a structure. And your structure, those of you that have taken any kind of composition class in high school or in college should recognize this. You start off with your transition in, which is a hook. You hook the audience, you bring them in, and you give them your main story body, which is the context, the challenge, the conflict and struggle that leads to the resolution. From there, you transition out to the lesson that is learned, and then you always end with an action, a recommended action. Okay, so this is our structure. How do we actually get the content? How do we fill this structure? You answer these questions, and you answer them in this order. Why should I listen? When and where did this take place? Who's the hero? What do they want? What's the problem or opportunity that they encountered? That's the challenge. What did they do about it? That's the struggle. How did it turn out in the end? That's the resolution. What did you learn? The lesson. What do you think I should do? Here's your recommended action. Okay, so you've extracted this information. You answer these questions, you've extracted that information kind of from your mind or from your memory. And then you plug them into what's called a story spine. And these are lines of dialogue which you can use, verbatim, word for word, that will create your story for you. When you match all three of these up, this is what it looks like. Okay, you have the steps that you have: your hooks, your context, your challenge, your conflict, struggle. Your hook, your transition answers the question, why should I listen to this? And then you use the story spine. I think the best example I've seen of this was, you fill in the answer. Same thing with the context, the challenge, down to your recommended actions. This, by the way, this will be available as a download for those of you that are interested and want to see the structure or would like to use the structure. So this will be a kind of a jerky story that I'm going to tell you because I'm going through it bit by bit. But this is how all this would work in a real life example. Okay, so our transition in, our hook. So I'm going to give you the situation. We're meeting with a realtor to illustrate the differences between a HECM and a traditional mortgage, specifically a HECM for purchase. And in the midst of conversation, I want to educate this realtor and show him how this works in real life. So one of the best examples, this is off the story spine, one of the best examples of this I've seen recently is a woman I just worked with. Okay, transition into the body, the context, where, when, and who. It was about 2 months ago. It was a woman named Carolyn that I worked with. She was married for 30 years. She's recently divorced. Her husband had mishandled their finances, squandered their finances, really. But she was smart enough to have kind of squirreled away a nice little nest egg for herself. She wants to stay in her home. She has this old oak tree in the backyard that her kids grew up playing under, and the school bus drops her grandkids off on her street, and they stop at her house. And every afternoon, she drinks her afternoon coffee in the back porch, watching the grandkids play under that old oak tree. And she can't imagine any scenario in which that would not be the rest of her life. Okay, so what's the problem? She has to buy out her husband's half, and she does not want to take out a traditional mortgage. She can't take out a traditional mortgage. And we would go into the conflict and the struggle. What did I do about it? Well, I explained the benefits of a HECM versus a traditional mortgage, and we originated a HECM and got her her house back with no monthly mortgage payments hanging over her head, and we were also able to set up a line of credit that's going to grow over time. The resolution, how to turn out. I haven't spoken to her in a couple of weeks, but the last I spoke to Carolyn, she was enjoying her home. She actually has an arts and craft room that she made with all the extra space, and her kid probably is over there playing under the oak tree like she has always wanted. And she's living off of her nest egg now until her line of credit grows. And when the nest egg kind of dwindles, she's going to tap into that line of credit. And she doesn't have a monthly mortgage payment over her head anymore. Then I would transition out. And this is the lesson. Carolyn isn't an isolated case. I'm talking to a realtor, trying to educate them about the opportunities that lie with this product. Right? Do you realize how many people just like Carolyn there are in this community? And then the recommended action. Like, that's why I think that we would make great business partners. You have customers. You have a lot of customers in need, and have to get the knowledge and the skills and the compassion really to meet those needs. And that's it. It's a simple structure that will yield effective stories time and time and time again. And the more comfortable that you get telling these stories and structuring these stories, the better you'll get at recognizing potential stories or potential series of events in your own life that will make for engaging and effective stories. So I'm going to pass things off to Brendan, and he's going to talk to you about using storytelling through social media.
Hey, thanks, Seb. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate kind of going over the main parts of storytelling, and what I want to get into and hope you guys get out of my section of this webinar is how to effectively tell your story on social. And then we're going to dive in a little bit on free and accessible tools just to kind of bolster your content creation efforts. So first thing that I want to get to is just going over the value that I hope that you guys get out of this presentation. First and foremost, we're going to be identifying a lot of strategies on the three main social medias. So Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I know TikTok's obviously a hot thing right now. There's still Snapchat out there, and there's other social media formats like Pinterest, Twitter. But I want to focus on these three, as I think these three are the most applicable for members in the mortgage market, LOs, and then for just all intents and purposes, getting started on social media. Secondly, understanding the types of content and then the content themes that you'll create to better position your storytelling. So a lot of the things that I hear from LOs or even freelance clients that I've worked with in the past is, I want to tell a story, or I want to bolster my social media presence, but I don't necessarily know what to create or what story to tell. So we'll go over that. Third, know a few tips to assist in playing alongside the algorithms. If you've looked into social media in any way, you've probably heard about the algorithm in terms of how each of these platforms deliver content to your audience base. So instead of trying to circumvent or cheat the algorithm, what I hope to do is give you a few background tips and information on how to play alongside it so your content's delivered at a higher rate. And then lastly, going over a few free to use and low cost platforms and softwares, as I had mentioned at the beginning, that'll help bolster your content creation efforts for, like I said, little to no cost. So first, I want to give a little bit of a viewpoint from social media relevance by the numbers. So just looking at general social media accounts, there's over 230 million active social media users in the US. They have about 7 accounts each. So that's about 1.5 billion accounts. All these numbers are pre-pandemic as well. And as you may or may not know, social media account creation has exploded, specifically through TikTok and Instagram during the pandemic. So everybody, while they were stuck in their homes, hopped on social media to stay connected with friends, whether it's through Zoom meetings, virtual webinars like we are now, and people started communicating virtually. So there's plenty more audience members or plenty more account holders on social media now, even following these numbers. So looking at Facebook in specific, this is a platform where you're going to reach the generation in about their 40s or 50s. A lot of opportunity in the LO and the mortgage side of things to talk with people who might be coming up on their second purchase or coming up on a refi. Looking at just from a marketer strategy standpoint, about 97% of business to consumer marketers and 91% of business to business marketers are focused on Facebook, not only as just a general strategy, but as their primary strategy when it comes to brand awareness and promotion and advertising of their business and their services. Looking at Instagram, a little bit different. This is where you're going to really focus heavily on the American millennial brand. About 67% of American millennials have an Instagram account. And although you think, as a business or an independent shop, how could a millennial be interested in my brand, or are they even going to follow a shop? Well, 80% of Instagram users follow a business account, and it's also about what story you're trying to tell. Instead of posting about the deals or the products or services you might have going on, what millennials really like to see is your community engagement and how exactly you're involved outside of business. So we'll dive into that personal aspect a little bit later. LinkedIn, it has a heavy percentage of leads generated, more so than Facebook and Twitter. But what I also want to point out is this is heavily involved in the B2B side of things. So you're not necessarily selling a widget or an item specifically at B2B. But what I like about that is mortgages are so unique in a way that it's more of the experience than the item that you're purchasing. So LinkedIn has a lot of that opportunity, especially on the professional side of things with the mortgage industry, being so nationally recognized and being the real backbone of the nation's economy in terms of the professionalism that you can deliver on this platform. So to kind of take from all those numbers, just the idea of the relevancy of who's on social media, the audience that you have. If you're not actively using social media to bolster your brand and your business, you're falling behind. It's in a position now to where it is one of the main or primary roles or channels to really focus on from a marketing perspective in terms of being able to contact people free, cheaply, and immediately. So what I hear from a lot from LOs, as I had mentioned earlier, is I'm having trouble creating the content, or I'm not seeing the results that I'd like to see. Well, lucky for you, that's exactly why I'm here, and we're going to go through today is how to tell these stories on each of these individual channels. I want to go over a few content cornerstones, a few best practices, and then, like I said, we'll dive into how to create that content with some low or free softwares and platforms. So first, how content looks on social media. This is a little bit of a, it's a cumbersome slide. There's a lot of words on here, but luckily if you go to our handouts and download the social one, this will be included along with a guide on some of the free or low-cost platforms that we'll get to later. But this is the idea of content forms, categories, and purposes. So what types of media should I be posting? What should I be posting about? So what my story consists of. And then what is this channel and its media used for? So just because it's on the sheet doesn't necessarily mean that it is like, for example, for Instagram, just because a content form, just because video is not listed, doesn't mean that video doesn't work. These are just the identified optimal ways to post and tell stories. And I'll go through a few examples following this slide, but looking at Facebook in specific, Facebook loves the idea of long form video. Reason being, if I'm scrolling through my Facebook feed and I stop on a video and I watch a minute and a half into this video, Facebook recognizes this content must be engaging. It kept this user on our app and on our platform for at least a minute and a half before they continued scrolling, which is a minute and a half longer than most of the videos on Facebook. We'll get into it later, but Facebook loves the idea of having videos that are about 3 minutes or longer. So the content form of being those long form videos, or there's photo galleries, or you know, those graphics that keeps people on the platform. It also likes articles, and even though articles are taking people off of Facebook, it's engaging to where people come back and converse in the comment section. That's why, you know, as users of social media, hopefully in this audience, you'll see a lot of the political commentary in your Facebook feed because that's what gets people engaged. You'll see thousands of comments in there, and the reason being is because Facebook will continue to deliver it, which they're embroiled in a little bit of hesitation regarding that right now, but or a drama. But the reason being is because it keeps people engaged. Same with Instagram. Photo galleries will keep people scrolling for a longer time or reading the body copy. LinkedIn really likes the long form blogs that keeps people on the post for a longer period of time, where they're reading about you know, business success standpoint or community involvement. I like to establish these three channels in three different ways. Facebook is about that large reach. It should be your primary form of communication. It should be the way that you're really directing all messages regarding your business or your community involvement or news happenings to your audience. It's establishing an identity in the community. When you look at the way people are using Facebook or social media, they'll land on your Facebook 9 out of 10 times first. That'll be the first channel of social media that they land on. So being able to have that full immersive customer experience, and then the multiple stories that you're telling throughout your timeline. Looking at Instagram, this is establishing an identity as an individual. So a past job that I worked, we put a lot of heavy focus on Instagram and how exactly we're going to showcase our people at this specific company throughout the pandemic. And what we did is we switched to a full-on photo-only lens or vision through your own lens type look. So instead of posting graphics or talking about products, we just focused all the lens on the people. And we saw reach expand by about 50% in 8 months. We saw engagement skyrocket by over 100%. So all these things kind of built up to establishing an identity as an individual, who you are through the lens of Instagram. And then LinkedIn is establishing identity in the industry. So your professionalism, your networking, folks that want to hear about the mortgage successes or your business successes, and then what you have coming down the pipeline from a business perspective. So going on, how to frame a story for social media. This is very hypothetical. So I'm a big fan of the Humane Society. I grew up with dogs my entire life. So I decided to go through the perspective of I'm an LO who's an advocate for the local Humane Society. And I'm hosting a drive in an effort to raise funds, not only for the Humane Society, but boost awareness in my community that I'm an LO of this open mortgage branch, and you should come to me for all your mortgage needs. But as you'll see, as I tell the story, it's not as explicit in terms of come to me for your mortgage needs. What I'm trying to do is establish an idea of the community perception. So looking at Facebook in specific, the bummer here is you guys unfortunately can't hear the video, but I'll be able to kind of talk through this a little bit. So I'm capturing an audience with that dog right at the beginning. And what the cool thing is about this is I'm getting real personal and authentic with this video. It's kind of like a walk and talk style. It's me showing a picture of my dog and telling the story of, this is the dog I grew up with. I loved having a dog. Thank God my dad brought the dog home, and you'll see a couple of pictures of him. And the reason I am partnering with the Humane Society is because of that personal hook. It got real authentic and real legit. And what I wanted to pinpoint is thinking mobile first in this platform too. Think about the way you consume social media. It's rare that you're sitting on your desktop and scrolling through your feeds. It's typical that you'll reflexively go to your phone and start scrolling on Facebook, Twitter, etc. The cool thing about this is this video is designed in the 4:5 format. So it's a little bit longer than a square would be. And the reason being is when you're scrolling, you're going to capture that audience quick. It's not going to be a 16:9 where it doesn't take up much real estate on the screen space. Reason being is this is going to get people to focus on the video a little bit in that first 3 to 5 seconds where I'm setting the hook with the video of the dog and like my page on Facebook gets people to stop. If you're a dog lover or a pet lover, which arguably most people are, you're going to stop and see what's going on with this video. And even that short, concise post copy doesn't keep people caught up too much in reading what's going on. They're listening to what's going on. And if they want to know more, I'm driving people with a call to action to go to the I'm Adopt-A-Thon website. A few algorithm tips, like I said, make your post copy concise, add that personality and authenticity to your videos. As I said earlier, videos 3 minutes or longer get shown to more people, and then just making sure to set that hook in the first 3 to 5 seconds whenever you're creating a video. So again, this goes over the establishing an identity in the community, its larger reach, it's telling people what's going on from the perception of this Humane Society Adopt-A-Thon. For Instagram, like I said, I really like that idea of capturing real photos. So these are all real photos. Me and my brother with the puppy when he came home, all these photos of Elwood. This is establishing an identity as an individual, the lens through my eyes. So the little blurb underneath is just talking about, Elwood, the brown dog, greatest dog ever, et cetera, et cetera. And now I'm partnering with Humane Society, and we're going to match adoption funds and send them back to the Humane Society. So those real images are capturing that attention. The more photos means longer time spent on your post. You have more engagement, and that tells Instagram this content must be engaging. So it's going to deliver it to more of your audience and even expand outside your audience if it's good enough content. You're going to want to make sure to tag people in your bio. As you see, I tagged Humane Society and then Humane Society of Macomb. And the reason being is those account holders will see that you're tagging them, share the post, like the post, and share with their audience as well. I encourage that through all social media. If you have an opportunity to tag somebody, tag somebody. The way you kind of are immersive in those multiple networks means that there's more opportunity for a larger audience to see. And then just a final reminder, making sure that you're cropping your photos. It's a good presentation. The way you see on this video in specific, how each photo is that square with the dog center. A lot of times I'll see people accidentally like cut heads off or cut body parts off or even text in some of the graphics. So make sure you're just going over that and using the Instagram editing features. Finally, looking at LinkedIn. So this is a long form blog post. I'll pause this real quick, but you can see that this is just all words essentially telling the story. I have a little graphic that's underneath, but I didn't complement it with real photos. I didn't complement it with a video. The reason I'm relying heavily on this is because of my storytelling through my actual written story. And what I essentially do is tell the story of this dog, Lily. She's a 10-year-old Labrador Retriever. She loves such and such, and she's at the risk of losing her chance on a forever home. And then I go into the idea of donate Tilly, or if you adopt Tilly or adopt another dog, and we'll match funds. Reason being is this goes into the idea of being authentic with the story, but getting to the point of the professional side of things, of being involved in the community. So it's the business achievement as well of I'm an LO in your community and we hope to match these funds. But it's also kind of going over that idea of establishing an identity in the industry as well. LinkedIn loves the longer stories. This one's complemented by a photo, and this took no more than about 5 minutes on Canva. This photo of this dog with the Dog Days Adopt-A-Thon. And what I'll show you is this was totally free. This was a free stock image that somebody uploaded to a general site. And I just plopped it in and changed the text and changed the color. So it's very easy to complement that. And the reason being is when somebody's scrolling, they're going to see a big post within a nice photo as well. Again, tag your connections. LinkedIn content tends to trend longer than Facebook or Instagram. So try to post things with a little bit more longevity, not like, hey, we have this going on today, or this event's happening today, and trying to drive people to the event. Reason being is 50 to 75% of your audience isn't going to see that until after the event's over, just because content trends for about a week or two, as opposed to Facebook and Instagram, which trend for about 24 to 48 hours. Don't be afraid to use emojis and spice up your content a little bit either. That drives people a little bit more to stop and pause if they were to see your content through a crowded timeline. So the low-cost content creation tools. First, Canva. That's where that image was made on LinkedIn. And it's great to have that supplement something else other than just the text. So if you're kind of going over and making graphics, this is easy to use, free. You can also get a pro subscription, but the free is totally doable. Premiere Rush, it is Adobe platform, so you need to make an Adobe account. But just for the mobile platform, this is free video editing software. It's incredibly easy to use. That's what I made the Facebook video on. It took me no more than about a half hour to 45 minutes. I'm also a little bit more of a perfectionist, so I was picking and prodding and trying to add all these different things to the video. But if you're trying to just throw a video in, throw some captions on it, or add some photos to it, really, really easy editing software that doesn't cost anything. Unsplash and Pexels are license-free images and video. So as you saw in the Facebook video, these videos of the dogs playing with the people, that's not my footage. That's somebody's footage that they uploaded to Pexels, and it's free to use. It's license-free, and you could share that on your social media. And the nice thing about that is I always encourage going out and getting your own footage or getting your own photos. But if you're in a position to where you need something real unique, or you're in a scream and rush, it's a good opportunity to go and be able to grab something quick and throw it in to spice up the content a little bit. Finally, Grammarly, in regards to LinkedIn, if you're writing and you're not a great writer, go and download Grammarly. This is actually a cloud-based plugin where if you're writing even in an email or writing a blog post, it'll correct your grammar and kind of give you suggestions as you go. You can get the premium, which has more capabilities and performance options, but again, simple, free, will correct your spelling, grammar, punctuation, and kind of give you some opportunity to correct delivery mistakes and refine clarity. So you get it now, but how is this going to help me get leads? Well, it's tough. Social media marketing isn't just specific to get this lead generation. It's more about advocacy, brand awareness, brand affinity. It's to get people to buy in. So it's on two sides of it's at the beginning and the end of the quote unquote traditional marketing funnel. So you look at the idea of, like, I found this meme online of, this salesperson closed the deal. But on the back of that salesperson, there's 48 marketing touches. There's social, there's word of mouth, there's website tracking, there's emails. There's all these things that add to the experience that finally gets that deal closed. It's not find Facebook, send them my number, deal closed. It takes multiple touches. It can take up to 15 to 20 touches of your storytelling and your content to get people to finally act. So the reason I say that is, don't create one video or don't make one gallery and think that you're going to get a lead or a sale from that. Continue telling the story. Repeated touches is the #1 name of the game when it comes to social media, is making sure that you're hitting those people again and again and again. And this is the traditional marketing funnel that I was talking about. Social media really relies on the awareness side and then on the back end of loyalty and advocacy. So that's what I have. I am going to pass it off now to our SVP of Wholesale, Josh Moran, who will go into his side of things. You can connect with me on LinkedIn too, if you'd like. You can find me just Brendan Buffa. I should be, I believe, the only one on there. So thank you. I'm going to pass it off to Josh now.
Thanks a lot, Brendan. Hey, I'm Josh Moran. I've been in the reverse mortgage industry for 15 years. I really wish that when I started in this industry that I'd seen the presentation that Brendan just gave. But 15 years ago, LinkedIn was in its infancy, Instagram was in its infancy, Facebook was definitely around, but we weren't using that at that point in time. It was just a way to catch up with your old college friends or whoever. But now it's become much more sophisticated, and social media and is definitely used in all aspects of our industry, and I need to get better at that, just like we all do. But when I started in the reverse mortgage wholesale 15 or almost 15 years ago, and I didn't know anyone in the industry, and more importantly, no one knew me. I didn't come from mortgage. I was a teacher. Grammarly, my students would have loved that back in the day. So I was faced with the prospect of really carving my way into a very established industry. It's a small industry, but very established industry. And get people to know who I was. And I found that at conferences and things like that, when we're face to face and you can talk to people, it was easy to let that conversation lead into who I am, what I stand for, and all that kind of fun stuff. But just cold calling and sending emails and things like that didn't really pass along who I was. And in wholesale, you're really selling yourself. You're selling your product knowledge, and I became, an expert in that over the first couple of months by reading everything that I possibly could, by being very involved in the scenarios that were coming my way. But people weren't knowing me. So what did I do? I started my own drip campaign. I didn't even know it was called a drip campaign until later on in my career, but That's what it was. So I started by sending little tiny snippets, little stories, things like that. And I started on a daily basis. And every morning now, I don't do that anymore because I don't have the time to do that. But every morning I do open up my email and I get what I consider starting out as a drip campaign, something from Rob Chrisman. And I know that most of you on this call probably get the Chrisman report in the morning. And he starts with something a little bit humorous, something that happened to him, something that's part of current events, and then usually ties that into some of the major changes that have occurred in the past 24 hours in the mortgage industry, and then gets into job opportunities and things like that. And he was able to parlay probably his just morning summary, and when he was only doing capital markets, into a very successful media campaign and organization and company. So good for him. So the drip campaign, it's important that you, as both Zeb and Brendan refer to, define your audience and tailor your content. You may have several different campaigns going on. You may have a campaign that goes out to your past clients, a campaign that goes out to your prospective clients, a campaign that goes out to your realtor network or professional network. And these are all things that you need to decide what type of content you're going to be sending out to them. My campaign was easy. It was, you were my audience. All of the brokers, and I see a number of familiar faces, and you're probably going to call and give me a hard time after this, but a number of familiar names, rather, faces we'll get to next year, hopefully, back when we can get to conferences. But defining your audience, you're going to be writing different stories to prospective clients as you would to your realtor network. With me, I was just reaching out to brokers and bankers. And mind you, I had different content that would go out to them. I started writing stories about myself, and I'll get to the content in the next slide. But there were definitely certain groups of my contacts that I didn't want to hear about, how hungover I was, or after the conference, or whatever, because they were on a much more professional. Our relationship was on a much more professional level. So defining your audience, tailor your content, and make sure that your content is guided towards that particular audience. When producing a drip campaign, set a consistent and realistic schedule. I started writing every day. That's how I'd wake up. I was on the West Coast, but things would start happening around 6 a.m. my time. So I'd get up and check my emails, then I'd drink my coffee, and I'd sit down and I'd write up a little story, or write up whatever content I was going to be sending out to my clients and my prospective clients that day. And that was at the beginning of my career. I had time to do that. As I got busier, the daily content started turning into every other day, and then it turned into once a week. And I literally set aside time to get that content out to the different audiences. And so that was, for all of you out there, you've got to figure out if it's a weekly, do you have enough content, do you have enough information that you can get out on a weekly basis? Is it going to be a monthly thing? Is it going to be a quarterly thing where you're just kind of touching base with old clients, reminding them that you're out there, asking for referrals, those type of things? And as you build your email lists, and most of you have a good CRM, and mind you, you can use the CRM, that's the content that's developed. There's a lot of companies out there who will help you send out, monthly, quarterly, even weekly little tips and tidbits. But I'll tell you, a lot of people out there use those, are using those types of content providers as well. And people in their emails can only use about a half dozen, pumpkin spice lattes. Sorry, pumpkins. I got lost a minute there. Pumpkin spice latte recipes before they realize, hey, these guys are all pulling from the same site. And sometimes at that point they'll start unsubscribing. And I'd say don't be deterred by unsubscribers. I believe it was Socrates who coined the phrase, haters gonna hate. And there may be some folks out there who just don't want to read what you have to put out. And that's fine. They'll unsubscribe, and most CRMs will let you see who is unsubscribed. And if you recognize that email address, use that as an opportunity to give them a call and say, hey, we closed that loan last year, your refinance, just calling to touch base with you. yeah, I recently noticed that you stopped taking the emails that I'm sending out. And you can ask them, legitimately why they did that. And maybe it was because they just don't like a lot of spam. Or maybe it's because the content that you were providing didn't really apply to them. And you might be able to switch them if you're writing, personal stories to one group. If you're talking about products to another group, maybe the products really just turn them off, and they'd much rather hear about you and what's going on in your life or how you're connecting with your community. These are the things that you can use as opportunities when people unsubscribe to your email blasts or social media campaigns. And continue to refine your content as you go. You may start off trying to present yourself as the product expert. Here's my 203K. Here's some things about 203K that you should know. Some things about the HECM program that you should know. And that's fine. But and then maybe you write a little piece about it where you introduce your new baby girl to your community or to your circle of email contacts, and you get a lot of responses. That shows you that type of content actually resonates with a lot of your subscribers or readers. And so that's why, continue to refine what you're putting out there within those particular groups that you're advertising to. Okay, the content itself. When I first started, I would send out information regarding FHA and HECM changes, things like that. Right when I started, we were switching from the CMT to LIBOR. And we had to convince the broker community so that they could convince the actual consumers out there that the LIBOR index was fine. It was just like the CMT. People were freaking out back in 2007 about transitioning from CMT to LIBOR. And now we've come completely full circle where the last year we've gone all the way back to the CMT, and LIBOR is no longer a viable index for us. But that was, there just wasn't a whole lot. Those of you who are in the HECM space know that there's just not a whole lot of changes in the program on a day-to-day or even week-by-week basis. So that content got a little bit thin. So I started writing stories about funny things that happened to me. I wrote about everything from this little lizard that would sit on my balcony and torment the cats, to a guy who had a rabbit on top of his head sitting outside of a supermarket asking for change, to this little raccoon family that would trespass in my backyard, and how I ran up on them, and this one raccoon stood up and did this crazy hypnotic dance to kind of, I guess, keep my attention deterred from the rest of the family as they snuck under the fence. Those were the things that I found funny, and sometimes I get humorous responses, and sometimes I get people saying, hey, just send me the rates and that's it. So once again, I would say, hey, I'd move them over to just rates, just like I had my high-powered presidents of banks and things like that on just rates, and then other folks who actually liked reading the stories would continue to receive those stories. I tell stories about my real life, like when I got the top bunk with my little brother, I had my arm hanging down the side, and he whispered up to me, he's like, Josh, is that your arm? And I'm like, what arm are you talking about? He's like, the one against the wall. I'm like, I don't know, touch it. And so Ben finally reaches out, touches my hand, and I grab his arm, and I pull it up, and I lay down on it, because I'm the big brother. That's what we do to our little brothers to make them tough, although I didn't think I was making them tough. According to him, years later, he said that I laid on his arm all night. He didn't sleep at all. I thought it was more like 5 minutes, but that was that story. I told stories about going to Julian in California for Thanksgiving every year. I tell stories about current events. If there was an asteroid shower that was going to be happening, bring that into the story. The Tour de France is going on, might talk about Mont Ventoux, what a nasty climb that was. And things like that were just going on. Politics, pretty much stayed away from politics back then, and I stay away from politics right now. And I think that it's wise that all of us avoid that when we're trying to garner people, when we're trying to sell ourselves and sell our products and get people to do business with us. Eventually, I got to the point where my day was just too busy to continue writing these stories. Had kids, and started sending out pictures of my kids. And so, you know, for the last few years, my campaign has solely been, you know, pictures of the family as it grew up, and everybody got introduced to my son Jet, followed a couple 17 months later by my son Chance, and then 7 years later by our little baby Bowen. And we've seen the boys grow up, we've seen my baby grow up, and it's a nice, easy way, because sometimes a picture does tell 1,000 words. I still throw out, you know, HUD changes, FHA changes, ECM changes, all of the stuff that we see on a regular basis, but I usually kind of throw a picture of one of the kids in there, and people love it. I get a lot of people sending emails back about their kids or telling me stories about what happened when their son first started walking and things like that. And it is a wonderful way for me to connect with the people in our industry without actually getting on the phone, without actually being in a conference, because for the past 2 years we haven't been able to do that. And when I do go to conferences, people will search out the booth and they'll find me and they'll say, hey, I haven't been to a NERMLA conference ever. I've been reading your stories for years. You know, how is that Chance doing, you know, with his violin or whatever? And we start up a conversation, and they already know who I am. So they know who I am, and then I can talk with them about why they should use me or Open Mortgage to do business. In fact, my boss, Greg Block, and the owner of our company, Scott Gordon, they knew who I was before they even hired me, because both of them had been subscribing to my email blast for over a decade. And so the drip campaign I've used personally. You know, within 5 years, I went from a nobody in this industry to one of the top AEs in the country, and then managing wholesale divisions after that. So it is an effective way to reach a large audience without spending the time it would take to tell these individual stories to everybody out there. All right, folks. With that, oh, and then my family, because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about that. Forgot I had that slide in there. But then again, I'm a technological Luddite, so here we go. We're going to open it up for, I just wanted to say, if there are any questions, you can feel free to reach out to any of us on here. And if you are interested in either working with Open Mortgage in the wholesale division as a broker partner with us, or coming on to Broken Mortgage as an originator, or bringing a branch over, you can visit us at www.openmortgage.com/grow-with-us. If there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box right now, and Patty Wills will be reading them out. Patty?
Yeah, I am here. Actually, I don't see any questions. The only question I actually see is asking if there'll be some future webinars, because this was great.
Awesome.
So,
and the answer is yes. We will continue to put this content out there.
So I want to say, and I'll just say to you, Josh, I actually knew you and knew when your firstborn was born, because I was a broker at the time and used to get your information and your little notes and pictures, and it was great.
Thanks, Patty. Awesome.
Okay, well, I think we can wrap it up today. We actually went a little over time anyway. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Zeb, Brendan, and Josh. Those were fantastic. That was an amazing amount of information, and I'm sure everyone got a lot from that. Looks like people stayed on. So thank you all very much. Thank you for attending, everyone.
And as Brendan said and Zeb said, there will be some handouts, one with the structure of telling a story, and one with all of the ways to engage in the various social media platforms that are out there. You can hear my dog Cooper barking like a maniac because I think the gardeners are here, so I'm going to mute myself from here on out. We will be sending a post-webinar follow-up email with links to those two handouts. Thank you all very much, and make it a great week.